Tonight's topic is a little bit of a, one of the things when I was looking at this topic, it's, we are all living in materialistic societies today. And because of that, it is sometimes difficult to imagine what it is like to live in a society that is not materialistic, because we have changed so much and we function and live our lives in such a materialistic way that we don't even recognize it in our own selves. We think that we are not materialistic, but the pressure, the social society, that the social pressure that comes to the society changes all of us to become something different. And perhaps a way of maybe comparing this is to imagine our great-grandparents in the society that they used to live. You know, like say Trinidad or Guyana or your own country. Think of your grandfather. When the world did not have so much emphasis on materialism, how they used to live, the kind of love and neighborliness and all of that, in which things were not the most important thing in their world. It was relationships and being neighborly and helping each other. So we are so steeped in a society here that it's sometimes when we talk about it today, you will say, oh, that's not really so. But it's really, really a society in which we have many challenges to be able to live as a conscious, practicing Muslim that such society poses to us. So first thing we want to do is to define materialism and materialistic society, what it is. So the definitions given usually in dictionaries: materialism is the infatuation with physical objects over intellectual or spiritual experiences and relationships. A materialistic society is one that is excessively concerned with physical comforts, acquisition of wealth and material possessions, and not so much the pursuit of spiritual, intellectual, or cultural values. The psychology of materialism is defined as a value system that is preoccupied with possessions and social image they project. This affects both the poor and the rich in such societies. And so from this definition, we see there's a great deal of emphasis, attachment, love, value placed on material possessions. And so that, in essence, is what materialistic society is. Now, when you live in such a society, it has effects on you. So we'll look at some of the negative effects, firstly, that society have on us. Then we're going to talk about some of the positive effects. Then we'll talk about the Islamic paradigm. And then we'll talk about how we can face some of the challenges. Hopefully we get all of this done in the time we have. So one of the things that when you live in a materialistic society, it ruins the relationship with people, because you only see people as a way to get to material. So I'm only seeing you as, how can I use you to acquire more stuff? Not to see you sometimes as a person, but to see you as a statistic, or an object to be used and abused to get to what I want. And so materialistic people tend to have issues with how they treat people. And quite often you will see when you deal with materialistic people and you do an act of kindness to them, they are so accustomed that nobody does something kind without expecting something in return, that they are shocked. You mean you don't want anything for this act of kindness? No. They cannot relate to that world sometimes, because they always feel that you have some ulterior motive behind any act of kindness. They have found that when you live in a materialistic society, the level of depression and anxiety is at an all-time high. In America, it is 1 in every 10 person is diagnosed with depression and anxiety. That's over almost 33 million people. So it creates, because material possessions cannot bring true happiness to the soul. We are more than just material. We have a body and a soul, as we talked about last week. And if both are not comfortably being serviced, you will end up in a bad place because you are never going to find true happiness. And so in such a society like ours, depression goes up, makes a person feel very, very dissatisfied with their life because something is not being addressed, the spiritual aspect of our of our lives. Possessions equal happiness. Many of us think that if you are comfortable and you have a lot of wealth, that will bring happiness. You go ask the people who have a lot of wealth if they're happy, and you will see we have had instances of billionaires committed suicide. That does not bring happiness. Having all this stuff in the world and still miserable. Ignoring others, because once you reach a certain status and level of wealth, you really don't think you need anybody. And so your situation becomes very lonely. And it increases and accelerates the depression and anxiety. You become bored very quickly. It's like the young kids now, they've seen all the latest movies that have, all the technology being displayed, the special effects have reached such a level. That's why you have people are striking now, because you have AI is coming. And so what happens is that you tend to feel I've seen it all. So I become bored now because I'm waiting for the new best thing. And so society keeps moving forward. And so once you see a piece of technology, you become bored of the rest of you want more. And of course, you're less interested in socializing and just talking to people. Materialists also, when they make purchases, they have high expectations that when they buy something that they will feel a sense of joy. They have a high expectation that item will bring real happiness in them. And they don't quite get that high, because after you buy the item, most of the time they find, research have shown, you become a little disappointed with the item. If not immediately, a few days. This is the only society in which people line up overnight, 3-4 days in front of stores to buy a latest iPhone or to buy a latest gadget. That is how important it is to them. That they know this item is going to be sold later on, but just the idea of I am getting it the first. People camp out, not for food, for some little piece of technology. It's an extraordinary thing, the way when you have become attached to materialism, what it does to you. And we don't see that as anything as a problem. There's a particular concept called the endowment effect in behavior economics. And it is a belief that when something becomes yours, they become more valuable to you than their value to other people. We start thinking of these objects as an extension to our identity and create an expectation that we'll achieve some satisfaction possessing them. So when you buy your stuff, you begin to feel that like, I am on a different plane, I'm on a different level. And you even treat it that this is who I am, man. I always have to have the latest car, the latest this, the latest that. That defines me. And then it leads to excessive love of self. It's called ujb in Arabic, self-aggrandizement, an excessive focusing on ourselves as important and special. That's why we are doing selfies. We're so obsessed with letting the world know who we are and how special we are. Because it is what creates this artificial sense of worth based on material. And we begin to measure our success and happiness based on material. And that, of course, creates a lot of problems for the individual, because you become, your personality is not rounded anymore. And also you begin to judge other people based on the level of their possessions that they have, and not because of any other value. So we begin to look up at people who have a lot of wealth, a lot of material positions, as being the heroes, as being the ones who we must adore and worship and go after and aspire to become like. People go crazy to see a celebrity or someone who is rich and famous. They line up for hours to just get a glimpse or to touch their hand or to take a photo with them. All these are things which materialistic society does to the individual. And we also secretly desire to be rich and famous like these people. And so when we travel and when we go anywhere and we go to another society that is not materialistic based, we tend to feel entitled, that we don't know who we are, and it produces pride and arrogance in the individual, boastfulness. People begin to, we have TV shows. If you just look at the television shows that we have, you'll get to understand how materialistic this society is. We have so many shows on food, just cooking food, on hoarding, on some of the most incredible. We have a show called Man versus Food. We have shows on dressing up and cosmetics, and and so it has led a society where it's extraordinary, what it has produced, and people are just in a mad race to acquire stuff, and in that respect, they have abundant God, they have abundant, they connect spirituality and everything else. So we live, for example, in America right now. Materialist society tends to produce two kinds of people: very poor and very rich. In America, for example, 1 out of every 5 people in 2022 was food insecure. So you have in America, despite having great wealth, 1 out of every 5 people don't know where they're going to find their meals. Cosmetic industry, $49 billion, $40 billion in plastic surgery in 2022. You have 1.7 million attempted suicide a year. There's a death by suicide every 11 minutes in the United States. Loneliness, 58% of the population are lonely. You have 64% of the Americans live paycheck to paycheck. So you have this 1 or 2% that has all the wealth, and the majority of the society lives in these terrible circumstances, suffering from the effect of materialism and not being rich themselves because of their mad pursuit of purchasing and buying things they don't need, having it there in this mad race, thinking that that is what determines success. I have to have the best car because that's a sign of success, and you can't afford it. And so we end up in this mad race and waste our money foolishly. So all of this takes place in a materialistic society. And it really, really changes you in so many ways. In the khutbah that I did at Nur Islam, I mentioned some of the ways in which materialism changes you. In terms of positive effects, materialistic society has some positive effects, which is one, you have access to quality education, you have quality medical treatment, you live in comfortable buildings, and technology around you provides lots of conveniences. You can press buttons and have remotes for almost anything. The social infrastructure in the society, the roads are there, you have good roads, you have all kinds of good vehicles, you have access to water, electricity, internet. And so there's a lot of the conveniences of the modern world available to you. And you have a society in which there's a large amount of experts and professionals that are there. And so all of these are positive things which exist in the society as well. Now, as a Muslim living in such a society, we being aware of both the ills and the benefits. Muslims, first of all, the way Islam is designed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He made Islam for us, those who practice Islam, you should know that you are able to exist in almost any kind of society. Whether it's the Eskimo in Alaska or the Sahara desert heat, whatever it is, whether it is the most radical oppressive regime or the most conservative or liberal, Islam have this incredible ability to survive and thrive in any environment, because its laws and its rules come from the one who have created all of that environment, who have created the human being, who knows the nature of the human being, and so has created a system that is always in sync with the human being. No, so the first thing that we want to learn about this faith of ours is the issue of morality. Where does your morality come from? For a lot of people who turn away from God, their morality is subjective. It's based on whatever they think is right, whatever they think is wrong is wrong. They have no consistent measure. And so something may be right today and tomorrow they say it's wrong. Or vice versa, something that was considered wrong before is now considered okay. There was one time in this country where they used to prohibit alcohol, and now it's permitted. So when you have subjective morality where it's based on your own whims and ideas and fancies and what society thinks is moral or not, then you would not have a proper, firm ground of consistent morality. And for societies to thrive, your morality has to be consistent across the board. So we believe our morality is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we have objective morality. It does not based and it's not changing based on whatever you think today or tomorrow. Allah is the one who defines our morality, what is right and wrong. And so it's consistent always. Number two, Islam teaches us that it is a middle balanced path. And we have made you a moderate nation, that you may be witnesses over humanity, and that the messenger of Allah is a witness over you. And so the religion of Islam does not want you to go into extremes in any direction. That's why the Prophet ﷺ did not approve when someone wanted to fast every single day or pray all night long. He used to emphasize you have to have balance. There's a time for this and there's a time for that. And so we have a faith that allows us to balance our spirituality with working for our living, with going and pray. And there is all of this, it's a middle path. Number three, spending. Because one of the things which the dunya comes and attaches itself to us, material things we acquire, and there's a great deal of emphasis in Islam on spending, that the whole idea behind having stuff is not to hoard and not to, just keep to yourself, but the whole idea, وَالَّذِينَ إِذَا أَنفَقُوا لَمْ يُسْرِفُوا وَلَمْ يَقْتُرُوا وَكَانَ بَيْنَ ذَلِكَ قَوَامًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Furqan, and those who, when they spend, are neither extravagant nor are they stingy, but they hold a medium way between those extremes. And so when it comes to spending, we don't hoard or we don't just spend all our money out. We strike a balance. Allah mentioned, never will the righteous لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. That and you will never gain righteousness until you spend from what you love. And whoever spent of that thing, then Allah is all-knowing. Yadul ullah khairan yadul sufla. That the upper hand is better than the lower hand. The one that gives is better than the one that receives. And so there's a great deal of emphasis in Islam that not to find yourself in a situation where you're just acquiring and you're not giving. In fact, the greatest blessings and rewards given in our religion is the people who spend for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so they will have one of the shades in Yawm al-Qiyamah. So Islam seeks to do that through zakah, through inheritance, where the wealth gets moved around and not just up in the hand of 1 or 2% of the population. The other thing that is very important that our religion teaches is that all humans are equal. That the ones who have more money than the others are not better than them. That the demarcation of your worth and your status and your specialness is not based on any material possession. Ya ayyuhan nas inna khalaqnakum min dhakrin wa untha wa ja'alnakum shu'uban wa qaba'ila lita'arafu inna akramakum 'indallahi atqakum inna Allaha 'alimun khabir. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Hujurat, O people, O humanity, O mankind, we have created you from a male and female and made you into nations and tribes, that you may get to know one another. So we've been created different so that we can get to know each other. And the best among you in the sight of Allah is the one who has more taqwa for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we are of a faith in which humanity don't just discriminate against each other. And the Prophet's last sermon, he said, all mankind is of Adam and Eve, and Arab has no superiority over a non-Arab, nor a non-Arab over any superiority over an Arab. Also, a white has no superiority over a black, the black has no superiority over a white. That we are all, except by piety and good action. And so this concept of treating your fellow human beings as your equal with love and kindness and compassion and empathy is very important, and not to allow your physical possessions to make you get carried away to think that you're better than others because Allah has blessed you with some stuff, and which this society teaches us to do. And then all the 5 pillars of Islam, is conducive to promoting and producing the salah. When you pray in jama'ah, it's 27 times more blessing. What I'm telling you? That Allah wants you to go and pray your salah in the community, connecting to Allah, not by yourself, but by mixing and interacting with people. The zakah is to be able to share from our wealth so that we develop empathy for the poor, for those who are less fortunate, and to develop a gratitude for what Allah has given us. That we are the one giving zakah, not receiving it. Fasting allows us to feel what the poor goes through. For a brief moment, what they go through for their whole life, we get to feel, and we can never fully feel like the poor. Because even though we fast, we know at the end of the day we are guaranteed food. Whereas a poor person don't know when the next meal and where the next meal is coming from. It's a different psychology in your brain. When you're starving and you don't see food in your future, you don't know when your next meal is going to come compared to us. But at least we get a small idea of what it feels like to feel the pangs of hunger. And so to develop some empathy for others and share what we have. And then the Hajj introduces us to global ummah, the ultimate social gathering in which we go and we interact as a global ummah. So all our pillars of Islam helps us. And when you go to the Hajj, if you're a materialist, it will bring you and humble you because you have to shed that rich robe that you're wearing, those gold bangles, that diamond necklace, and you have to shed all of that and wear 2 pieces of white cloth looking just like the next person did. Salah, you have to stand king and pauper together, shoulder to shoulder touching. So all of these lets us know that Allah is trying to teach us that your worldly possessions and all of that is not such a significant and important thing that you should get all hung up on. And then Islam promotes relationships in every area of its sphere. خَيْرُكُمْ خَيْرُكُمْ لِأَهْلِ وَأَنَا خَيْرُكُمْ لِأَهْلِ. The best of you are those who are best to their families. Promoting relationship. Ad-dinu wa amila. This religion is based on relationship. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ. The believers are brothers. لَا يُؤْمِنُ أَحَدُكُمْ حَتَّى يُحِبَّ لِأَخِيهِ مَا يُحِبُّ لِنَفْسِهِ. None of you has attained this faith until he loves for his brother as he loves for himself. All of these promotes and so many more. Al-mu'min lil-mu'min kal-bunyan. The believer to another believer is like a billion, and it goes on and on. Man yassara ala mu'si yassara Allah fi dunya wal akhirah, and so on. Man sadra musliman sadrahu Allah fi dunya wal akhirah. Whoever protects and defends his fellow Muslim brother, Allah will do that for him as well. And so it promotes us living in harmony with each other. You are not allowed to go eat food if your neighbor is hungry. We have to share. And if you can't share, then don't go eat in front of them. And so on. There's so many emphasis on relationship, that we are social beings, and the religion causes us, when you are relating with each other, interacting with human beings, and engaging and understanding each other's plight and difficulties and hardship, you develop love and connection with each other. Humility. Because when you have a lot of stuff, it produces arrogance. And so whoever have an atom's weight of pride in his heart will not enter Jannah. So one of the companions said, what do you say about someone who likes to dress up in nice clothes? Is that a sign of pride? The Prophet says, Allah is beautiful and likes that which is beautiful. That is not what he's talking about. Arrogance is to deny reality and to consider others beneath yourself. It is when you begin to look down on others and lord it over them and boast to them, that's where the pride comes. It is not just having nice stuff and wearing it and enjoying it. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ used to discourage people who had wealth that they should dress like beggars. Man came into the masjid and he was so bad shape that the Prophet wanted to collect money to give him. He says, no, I'm very rich. I was, let it show on you. You know, Allah has blessed you with wealth. You know, use it. Don't go around like a beggar. You know. And so this again teaches us how to live in such a way that we will not be caught in the clutches and the traps of materialism. And then the ills of materialism. Islam prohibits them for us. You know, these are the things people, when they have a lot of money, a lot of wealth, a lot of status, a lot of fame, this is some of the things they end up getting. Shaitan lures them into doing with their lives. Drinking a lot of alcohol, holding a lot of parties, that this is their life, this is what they consider happiness. Committing adultery, gambling, cheating, taking riba, showing favoritism, loving everything else before the love of Allah, theft, bribery, you know, whatever it takes to get the job done, to get my money, to get to the bottom line, I don't care what I have to do. Excessive attachment to the dunya. And so all of these things, Islam prohibits them. So you don't fall into the trap that materialism has waiting for us when we practice our faith. And so these are just some of the multiple teachings of Islam that if we practice it, we will not fall into that trap of looking at our lives as just pursuit of acquiring stuff, having them for a moment and then dying and leaving them to everybody else. That's not what life is about. And so how does Muslim deal with the challenges? Besides practicing what I've just said, there's a couple of other things. Number one, you've got to make sure that you're attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The moment you disconnect from Allah, the human being by nature has been created to worship something. We cannot do without worshiping something. And so if you don't worship Allah, your soul and your being will drive you to worship something else. Sometimes we end up worshiping money. Sometimes we end up worshiping a person. Sometimes we get involved in a cult, you know, or an idea. You know, so try to make sure you remain attached to Allah, especially by performing the daily salah. Number two, properly understand that success in Islam is based on the one who's connected to Allah. When Allah describes in the 22nd chapter about successful, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, successful indeed are the believer, and then he gives 11 qualities of what that success means. He talks about praying and about keeping away from vain conversation, that they shun vain talk and all of that. Has nothing to do with acquiring stuff. So we don't understand success to mean that having a lot of stuff to the detriment of the other things. It does not mean that we can't acquire stuff. You can take, and what you should try to do is, as the Prophet ﷺ said, "Kun fi dunya ka'annaka gharib Abiru sabil. Be in the world like a traveler or a stranger. So you just take what you need from the dunya. You don't allow yourself to be consumed by the dunya. The dunya should be in our hands and not in our hearts. Don't develop such a love for the dunya that you become so attached to it that you cannot detach. Keep the dunya in your hands and use it for good. Whatever Allah has blessed you with. Abdurrahman ibn Auf, who was a very famous companion, he was like, he would have been a billionaire today. Allah blessed him so much money that he said, it's like every rock I turn, I find money. It's like no matter what I do, like I can't get poor. Money just keeps flowing towards me. And he became so concerned about all of this money that he began to give it away as fast as he got it. Just keep giving it, giving away, because he was afraid that it would consume him and he would not be selected for paradise. The other thing is that we must treat people with respect, even if it's a beggar, even if someone with disability. We must always have honor and respect to others, even if they are the biggest atheists or whatever it is. You see someone that you hate their lifestyle, but we are obligated to treat people with respect and honor and dignity. And because tomorrow they may be a Muslim, today they may be cursing Islam, but tomorrow they may become Muslim. So we always try our best to be dignified and to consider the human being a creation of Allah and to treat them right. So it's not based on, the status is not based on how much they have. Don't judge the book by its cover, as we say. And you have to also constantly watch yourself, because the society will change us. We'll begin to think we are bigger than we are. Got to be vigilant. Keep assessing how you're becoming. If you find that you become so obsessed with, if someone says an unkind word to you, you get all out of shape. You want to sue them, you want to, curse them out back and all of that. When you start to become like that, instead of making an excuse for them, you know that you are changing. When you begin to focus on goals rather than the effort to make towards the goals, all of this, you begin to see you're changing. You have to be very careful. One of the ways of helping yourself to not become materialistic is to connect to an Islamic community and to get involved in Islamic community, because when you're around good people practicing the faith, it will rub off on you. As the Prophet said, it is like a person, he did an analogy. He says, it's like someone who visits a perfume shop. Even though you didn't buy any perfume, when you come out from there, you will smell sweet. Compared to if you go to a blacksmith's place, you will smell different. So when you hang out with good, pious people, it will have a positive effect on you. They will remind you about Allah, and they will help you when you're falling. They will advise you when you're going astray. So don't live isolated from the Muslim community. Try to always get involved in your local masjid or local Islamic organization, because that's a very good antidote of not becoming a materialistic person. And then you should also make sure that the technology, that you must understand that you're a servant of Allah, and you have to be very cognizant of when people begin to praise you, an excessive praising of yourself, others praising you, or you excessively praising others. It's not something that we really do. The Prophet ﷺ used to say, don't put me on the same pedestal like the others before that my time, where people used to literally end up worshiping their prophets. We are not like that. We have to have a humility that says, whatever I do, whatever amazing things that you think I did, it is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think it was Imam Shafi used to say to people who praise him that, you don't know my sins. All you see is the good thing that you see coming from me, but you don't know, I know more, the sins I commit. And so he used to remind himself about that, so you don't become too carried away. And then the technology and the good things of a materialistic society, we need to use them for dawah. All the technology that is available, the Zoom, the this, the that, whatever. There's so much technology available now. Use them for Islam, and the more you use them for Islam, the more the Islamic dawah, the Islamic way gets established, and the more goodness comes to it. And lastly, very important, try to acquire as much knowledge. One of the greatest antidote against materialism is having knowledge of Allah and the religion. So you will be able to know how to protect yourself from shaitan. A knowledgeable believer against the shaitan is powerful, because they will be able to recognize shaitan's ways. وَكَيْدَ الشَّيْطَانِ ضَعِيفًا. Allah says that the plans and strategies of shaitan, they are weak. They look strong to us because we haven't acquired knowledge of our religion. So we need to acquire knowledge of our faith, and we need to have deep knowledge. That is why the people in this class who commit and come on a regular basis, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will increase their knowledge and make them less susceptible to the tricks and traps of shaitan as he tries to move us away from our religion. And so I want to close by mentioning they came to Ali radiallahu anhu, and I think in another class I have given this also. And they asked him to tell them about the difference between having knowledge and having wealth, having a lot of material or having a lot of ilm, mal or ilm, wealth or knowledge. And they wanted to know the difference. And Ali radiallahu anhu, who was so brilliant and such an incredible intellect, one of the great intellects of our ummah, he said, he gave them 10 reasons why knowledge is better than wealth. He says knowledge is a legacy of the prophets, while in wealth is a legacy of the Pharaoh. So knowledge is better than wealth. Number 2, the people who guard their wealth. People who have wealth, they have to guard it, while the people who have knowledge, their knowledge guard them. When you have a lot of wealth, you have to have a lot of security guards. You can't sleep at night. Your world becomes different. You're worried about which of your relatives and your friends are really true, or they're just trying to rip you off. So you can't make friends as easily as a poor person because you have wealth to protect. And so you're sleeping at night, you hear a sound, you have to run out. So when you have wealth, you have to be constantly guarding it and being so aware of who's trying to steal it and so on. Whereas when you have knowledge, it becomes a guard for you because you develop insight. You can be able to see. Number 3, a wealthy man has many enemies, while a man of knowledge has many friends. So when you have wealth, a lot of people become your enemies. They all want your wealth. But when you have knowledge, you end up having a lot of friends. Number 4, knowledge is better because it enlightens the mind, where wealth blackens it. You become very narrow-minded when you have a lot of wealth compared to knowledge. Knowledge widens your insight and your mind. Number 5, knowledge is better because a knowledgeable person is generous, while a wealthy person is apt to be a miser. And this is so true. You'll find if you go to the Muslim relief agencies everywhere, among the most generous people are the poorest people. You'll find a lot of people who have a lot of wealth, but they're not as generous. Even though they can give more, quite often they end up being miserly because their wealth changes them. Whereas a poor person is more likely to share what they have because they understand the difficulty and hardships of poverty. And so they are more likely to spend of the little that they have. Knowledge is better than time because time cannot harm knowledge. But wealth If you don't keep investing it constantly, it can disappear. But knowledge remains with you, literally, unless you get some kind of sickness, until you die. Knowledge is better because it inspires humanity, while wealth breeds despair. We've been through a whole class showing how materialism, and I've given you some statistics, how it leads to loneliness and depression and despair and suicides and spending on silly things and cosmetics and excessive spending. Doesn't mean that I don't want you to convey the idea that I don't think you should spend on cosmetics. But when we become excessive in these things, it breeds despair. Knowledge is better because it is infinite, while wealth is limited. There's only a certain amount of wealth you can acquire in one lifespan. With knowledge, you can go and, there's an ayah in the Quran, fear Allah as much as you can go to, whatever limits. Knowledge is better because it increases with distribution, while wealth decreases with spending. So the more you give from your knowledge, the more your knowledge increases. The more you give from your wealth, the wealth decreases. Lastly, wealth is better because it cannot be stolen, while your wealth can be stolen. What an incredible, amazing comparison between knowledge and wealth by Ali radiallahu anh, just the top of his head. He didn't go to university and do a research paper. They just asked him a question, and he just responded with these 10 gems. And that was the level of intellect that the companions had. If you ask us the same question, we would have to go Google and spend a long time to come up with even 5. Just to give you an idea of how insightful Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made these companions. And so, my brothers and sisters, I want to caution all of us to live your life simple. The Prophet said, Yassiru wa la tu'assiru. Make your life simple, don't make it very complicated. The more stuff you have, the more time you have to spend behind them, the more you have to answer for them. You have to keep shuffling them, packing them, repacking them, putting them someplace, finding more storage. It just makes your life so miserable when you have so much things that you can't control. So try to live simple. Take from the dunya what you need, but focus on working to make the akhirah the best and brightest place that you can be, that you will work to get to the highest level of Jannah, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from, and I want to say that Islam is of such that you can successfully live in a materialistic society and still thrive. Once you practice the deen, it allows you to live in any society and thrive. But we've got to be very careful, or else we could easily be swayed into something that doesn't really carry us where we want, inshallah. I've been to janazah where people insist that the lady has to wear the best dress to bury in. They put all her jewelry in the grave, in the coffin. She had to get a special fancy pillow. People become, I've seen people who they bury, they have to be in a glass entombment, and then they have, lights continuously being poured into the grave. People go to such excess that they don't realize that even after you die, it doesn't benefit the dead doing all of that. Assalamu alaikum.